G'day. Lando Norris believes that F1 is not the purest form of racing. Charles Leclerc says overtaking will be a challenge. And Carlos Sainz said F1 and the FIA need to be open-minded in the first few races. Today's press conference had it all. There was plenty of honesty at today's press conference, with drivers openly speaking about the various issues they've encountered during testing. At one stage, Charles Leclerc said that passing is going to be near on impossible. And to that, Lando just had a wry grin on his face and gave him the thumbs up for speaking about what all the other drivers openly agree: it's going to be tricky. Now, Max Verstappen earlier in testing mentioned that he too was unhappy with the way these cars were operating. And now, I'm no technical guy, but certainly the battery management, the Isaac Hadjar having a crack at overtaking, you probably saw that vision online, had 2 goes at it because he ran out of power as he was overtaking a car. My understanding is, though, that the FIA are going to look at these regulations and perhaps ease off on a couple of them such that we get some good racing, because we're only, 2 weeks away from our first race in Australia. And if things didn't change, I'm just not sure what the spectacle would look like in Melbourne for race 1. While Kimi Antonelli and George Russell were setting some great times over the last couple of days, you probably can't read a great deal into that. If you look at last year's testing, Carlos Sainz set the fastest time, but that didn't do Williams that much good when it came to the early part of the season. Aston Martin had another sad day on track with some issues affecting their car, and tonight I was told that Cadillac might even be slower than Aston Martin. One thing the drivers have agreed on is that they like the lighter weight cars and the smaller cars. That's a given. And if you look at the testing times in 2025 compared with this year, we are about 3 seconds slower. Now, today I went out and shot cars coming into the braking area. And as you can see here, the rear wing is open, which is typical as you come into a braking zone. And then it closes. But if you have a look at the front wing, that also pops up. So there are 2 different ways that you can introduce more air resistance and help slow the car down. And then at some point, Ferrari wheeled out an interesting rotating rear wing. I can't show you any vision of that, but this is what the rear wing looks like of the Ferrari when it is closed. Now, thank you to Hahn Air, a proud partner of VCarb, for sponsoring this video. Are you heading to an F1 race this season, or simply need to get from A to B? Whether you're travelling for business or pleasure, a private charter with Hahn Air is the way to go. With their premium connoisseur service, you'll be sure to experience luxury like never before. They'll take care of all the documentation and paperwork, meet you at the executive VIP terminal, organise exclusive VIP transfers, ensure all your onboard expectations are not just met but exceeded, and serve gourmet catering tailored to your taste buds. Take to the skies in a Cessna Citation CJ3 Plus or a Cessna Citation Latitude for up to 6 passengers, or a Pilatus PC12 Turboprop for up to 9 passengers. If you're ready to book your VIP executive flight experience, contact the team at Hahn Air by clicking the link in the description. Now, the fog on day 4 was quite remarkable in the morning, but it burnt off quickly. In fact, this is at 8:28, this one at 8:42, and this final shot here at 9:12. Had that fog have stuck around past 10 o'clock, they would not have been able to run testing, because the helicopter has to be able to fly. In the event of a crash, they've got to be able to take people to hospital. And if they can't do that, and that happened in a practice session going back to China, I remember, in my early days, they don't run the session. And that would have happened here in Bahrain. Now, I've spent a bit of time looking at these cars, and have a look at the air intake valve that sits above the driver's head. It starts from very small, say the Ferrari here, then the Aston Martin, Audi, Red Bull and Merc. And you can see inside these intakes that there's the structure that provides protection in the event of rollovers. Next up, there's Williams, Alpine, McLaren and Haas, all similar, but the biggest by far is this one, the VCarb, and it is bigger by a margin. And with those rear wings, they're not all the same. Some of them fold down, others pop up. It's pretty much whatever you want to do. As are the tyre rims this year, because in years gone by, F1 has provided every team with the same tyre rims, but not this year. Everyone can make their own and do anything they like with them. One design will be better than everybody else. It's just a matter of working out which design that is. This track, and the city in fact, is one of the safest places that we go to on the F1 calendar. And while drivers normally need security, well, the top drivers like Lewis and Lando and Oscar have security at each race, but here Lewis had no security, which is very unusual, and the McLaren boys just had one between the 2 of them. But I can assure you that will change once we get to Australia and the crowds come back en masse. I can tell you that I've never been to F1 when Ramadan's on, but it started on Wednesday. What that means is for those who follow the religion to the letter, there's no eating or drinking during the sun-up hours. Now, luckily for us, we're still catered for in the paddock and the media centre, and the teams are catered for. And at night, restaurants are open, not all of them, but most. But it was interesting for me to see in the morning when I went down for breakfast here at the Western that the curtains were closed and the shutters drawn on the restaurant so that the Muslims who pass by that restaurant don't have to view us eating inside. Fernando Alonso made me laugh yesterday. I was out in the car park and I was shooting pictures of all the drivers' cars for a Drivers Drove episode, which comes up at some point. He walked past me to get into his car, and I said, I thought you might have been driving this Land Rover. Pretty flash, and it had Aston Martin sticker on the front window. And he very sharply replied, no, Kim, here we are loyal to Cadillac. And that's right, he was driving another team's car. But I do like his sharp sense of humour. Always have. On Wednesday, Lance Stroll had an off. Ended up having to get his car brought back to the track on the back of a trailer and taken off by the guys in the team. But the comments on the post were rather savage towards Lance. And to be fair, it wasn't his fault. It was a mechanical issue and he was just a passenger. Yes, Lance makes some mistakes behind the wheel. A number of drivers do. But in this instance, I think we need to give him some leeway here. Look at the floor here of the Cadillac garage. This is a skid mark left by Valtteri Bottas. Now, this has been there for a good few days. They actually can't get that off the floor. And that's unusual because normally I see garage crews getting down there and spraying it and wiping it clean. I can't tell you why this was such a stubborn stain to move, but it didn't want to be moved. One thing that struck me in the Cadillac garage yesterday was the number of women working in that garage, because jobs for females in motorsport are rare. Certainly in catering, there's lots. But have a look here. This is a reliability engineer, and these two crew are system engineers. And down at Haas, not only have you got Laura Mueller, who is Esteban's race engineer, but I spotted another new face on the engineering side. On top of that, you've got Chloe Collins, who is a Williams car build technician. She actually stepped into the role of number one mechanic for testing. Max Verstappen fans, you'll be happy to know that Max said he's going to continue with Red Bull. He has no plans at this stage to leave the team or the sport. But I do think we'll see him doing some extra events to keep his interest in motorsport up. Now, let me introduce you to the 22 F1 trainers. Sometimes they're physios and performance coaches, but it's pretty much the person that sees them the last when they get in the car, and it's the first person they see when they come back into the garage. They're a very important part of a driver's support network, and this year there are a number of new faces. This is Borja Presol, works with Carlos Sainz. Arvid Lindblad's working with Sam Village. Sam used to work with Daniel Ricciardo. Esteban Ocon's working with Richard Prevost, who's French, so that would be Richard Prevost. And Valtteri Bottas has his mate Paul Harris doing those duties. You might have picked up that Carlos has a new trainer. Where has Pierluigi Della Bona gone? He's working with Oliver Bearman, and Jose Canale and Xavi Martos are back working with Sergio Perez. All the other drivers have their same trainers from last year. Thierry Samiller, John Malvin, Aleix Casanovas, Sergio Villa, Rupert Mannering, Harry Mann, Andrea Ferrari, Angela Cullen, the only female in this group, Patrick Harding, Declan Foley, Henry Howe, Eduardo Bendinelli, Alexandros Gribovs, Paolo Gargiulo, Miguel Presencia, and finally Ben Thorne with Pierre Gasly. Now, still on the subject of the Melbourne Grand Prix, it's known as the home of the Adelaide Grand Prix. Why is that? Well, back in 1996, from memory, Melbourne stole the race from South Australia, which is where I was born. I've got a video coming up shortly about the Australian Grand Prix and why it was so warmly regarded. Well, great news for South Australia because they've wrested the MotoGP off Victoria and they're bringing it to the same, well, pretty much the same track as what they raced on in Formula 1 back in the 90s. Now, this is a huge story, and Victoria are certainly going to be disappointed that they've lost the Phillip Island race to a very happy South Australia. And coming up later this year, I'll be attending a MotoGP race as media, photographing it, doing a video about it. I'll be very keen to share that with you. That is the Austrian GP, and I think it falls between Madrid and the Azerbaijan race. I must say that testing here in Bahrain has been a real joy. We've had perfect weather for it, no rain, a bit of fog, a couple of mornings, sunny skies and temperatures in the high 20s, and very few people in the paddock. But of course that will all come to a screaming halt once we get into the start of the season. 24 races in 21 different countries, and I intend to be there for every one of those races. Now, finally, thanks for watching.
And stay passionate!
Said F1 and the FIA, you